Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Saco City Council meeting for Monday, March 16th at 6:30 p.m. Before we call the official meeting to order, we do have a joint meeting with the school board this evening, and they will be presenting the first draft of the budget. Superintendent Ray?
All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming tonight for budget overview. Just get this set up here. So everyone should have a handout in front of them. I emailed to you this afternoon. We had a couple of changes on Friday afternoon that we needed to work through this morning to get you updated numbers. But just want to talk to you a little bit about the budget process. Budget process typically begins as soon as you vote on one budget, we start working on the next one. Reason for that is that sometimes your greatest opportunities for savings start immediately as you can line up things, predict things, and begin thinking about the next process. On the staff side of things, teachers begin to formulate their classroom budgets in early October and November, hand those off to principals after the Thanksgiving break, and then principals try to get it into central office's hands before they go away on the Christmas holiday, so it gives us a chance to peek at things. One is we've worked really hard with our staff and our principals to put together a fantastic budget, and they really take it very, very serious because they want to do a great job for the community, for the team, and always just kind of having a philosophy of just putting out there what we need. No big asks in this budget. That's kind of the scary part, is that this is just a status quo budget minus one position. And that one position is one that we added a couple of years ago with kind of an attendance bubble at Young School. That bubble is moving on to Burns schools. There's no more classrooms at Burns schools. So it's hard to even deal with that piece. And we'll be dealing with that position as part of the retirement process. Our goal is to make sure that all of our employees are coming back, and any adjustments that we need to make, we would go through that first lens of anyone who's retiring or moving on. We also very much have a lens that we're starting to look through, is it's only 2 short years until we will be opening a new building here in town, and also beginning to formulate what those operations would look like, not only from a staff route, but even this summer in preparation for the next budget, we'll be starting to look at a lot more of the operations from bus routes to custodial to other things, because one of the things we want to be really, I would say, cautious and forward thinking about is making sure that City Council and School Committee aren't dealing with any increases or decreases based on the transition during one budget period, but making sure you get a couple of bites at the apple during 2 budget periods to make any adjustments. Examples may be when we run bus routes, we may find that it's add some, subtract some. And it could be like, okay, we need to have not more buses, but a few more smaller vehicles to operate to make this all work, and making sure that doesn't happen in one budget cycle is what we're hoping for. As we get into this budget piece, please, as you go along, ask any questions. Don't hesitate to stop, and I'll pause a couple of times because there can be a lot of information. When we think about Saco schools and where we are, I'm going to work off my computer. First, you can think about our students and engagement and well-being, having rigorous and collaborative learning experiences, and we also want to make sure that students are responsible use of resources. That's for students and thinking about what we teach them of the resources that they have at hand, and us as a board, as office administration, is we want to make sure that we're not creating any waste that's out there and trying to stretch every penny that we can for the long term and short term. And I think some of that can be seen as the investments that you guys, starting 4 or 5 years ago, and us on the school committee side, just making sure of taking care of our facilities in-house. We knew that was a challenge. We know that we have schools coming. We still have to live in our other schools for a couple of years. Council will have a big decision to make about all of those places after we're thinking about an exit. And for any of you who've been in Saco Middle School, the investment that we've made in that building is extremely noticeable just from as you enter the front doors. We've had a really strong plan in place is to make sure that we take care of those issues prior to going into the new building, and thinking about how, as we creep up on greater local shared payments for the bond, we have a lot of our major capital needs done so that we can kind of pull back a little bit while easing into the bond payments. When we think about our current building project that's being done, I don't know how many of you have had an opportunity to drive by and peek in the road or drive along Route 1 and see the massive piles of earth piled up back into the woods. But we're hopeful that this week, Meg, correct, that we will be starting on foundation. That is the plan. We are currently about 13% completed in the project, yet you can't see any of it other than groundwork. But this week, we're hoping to that the foundation will start to be poured, and by next fall, I think you're going to see some real structures out there. The stormwater infrastructure is part that has been worked on. Really been working hard on the Eastern Trail connection, foundation systems, infrastructure, which is installing the water lines, stormwater pipes, and the road loops, and then on schedule for this March construction. If you go to our construction page, our students at Saco Middle School and the teachers as part of our drone club have taken some really great shots of the progress over there. So it's very exciting. When we look across our school departments and some of the things, you know, there's the day-to-day pieces that are part of great achievement for kids, but there's also some other pieces that we just wanted to call attention on of just kind of some celebrations for us. And one is just district-wide growing our Best Buddies program, or our inclusionary practices with great expansion in our unified sports for kiddos. If you haven't been to a unified basketball game and you want just a feel-good moment, stop in at Saco Middle School for one of the games, or today our C.K. Burns athletes were at Old Orchard Beach for an elementary unified basketball game. Our pre-K program has worked really hard in the transition from child development services into the school departments, and we've been servicing 4-year-olds this year, and next year we'll be servicing 3- and 4-year-olds to make sure that they have the appropriate special programming that's needed for early intervention. When we think about our Learning Works partnership for after-school programs, literacy collaborations, making sure that our students have the opportunity to participate in spelling bees like we all did, or at least witnessed. I certainly never was in a spelling bee. Math competition, now that might have been a different story, but not a spelling bee. Or knowing that at our middle school, we received a $500,000 grant for STEM programming that we'll be working on and reworking some space for our start next fall. As we think about budgets over the last several years, we talk a lot about valuation, because the school funding formula really starts with 2 pieces: student counts and your property valuation. And there are some struggles in this budget year for us. In the first part, let's just start about is, what is Saco's valuation increase for 2027? And the city grew at 10.53%, which was under the state average of 14.61. So you start off with a little bit of good news on the valuation side of things because you didn't increase the same way that other municipalities did. As we look ahead to the next year, you'll see that Saco valuation still stays under the state average, but just slightly. That's part one. Part two is looking at your demographics as a city. And this year, we lost enrollment. Now, we know that the big part of that loss in enrollment is because the project at the hotel, where we had a lot of new Maine residents, ended. And as quickly and as sharply as that started, it ended, dropping us about 100 students out of the school department. So our enrollment starts down. And so when you lose students quickly from your funding formula, we'll talk about the places about where that impacts us. And not only is it just the loss of students in the student count, but any student who is an ML student had some weighted counts on page 2 of the funding formula. So one of the things that we've talked about at the superintendent's level is that what was very difficult for Saco is that that process came on board so quickly. And by the time we really started to get to a point where we were providing appropriate services, it kind of ends. And so on the front side, you didn't necessarily get the push-in of funding. And then on the back side, you get the immediate loss. And so that's one of the challenges here. When you look at our economic status as a district, and these are students who are living in poverty or classified as economically disadvantaged, you can see that we are at our highest in years at 36.34%. And so over a third of our students are living in poverty. And what is interesting is 2 years ago, that was 1 in 4. Last year, that was 1/3. And now we're creeping up again. It's tougher and tougher for our families to maintain above that poverty line. And when you see that we're at 1,012 students and we were minus 100, that's telling you something. Our special education numbers are about 19.47% of our students. And our EL students, or our multi-language learners, are 7.45% of our student time count. Now, this is a great place to pause and really allow you to ask some questions about that first information, if you have any.
It's just on the economic status, there was a huge jump, 23-24 to 24-25.
Yep.
Can you explain why we gained so many?
So one of the big pieces is twofold. One, many of our residents who were at the hotel during those years came on board. The second thing is the state of Maine started using Maine Care data. In prior years, when the switch over to all families receiving subsidized lunch occurred, you saw a disincentive, I guess, for families to fill out those forms, because no one wants to fill out a form that you take back to your school that says, hey, I need help. No family wants to do that. So the state of Maine, because this was a problem all over, said, what's a better way for us to really assess poverty within our local schools? And they started looking at Maine Care data. So students who received Maine Care health benefits, and that's been a really reliable number for us because it gives an automatic for the kid versus waiting for a piece of paper to come home and back. You've got that information automatically.
Quick question. What are, I presume you're going to walk through what the cost drivers are that result from that increase?
Yep.
So we know what the net effect is of what's added to the budget as a result of these additional children being part of the program.
Correct. You'll see everything that goes through what our cost drivers are later on in the presentation. Okay, so,
Anyone else?
was there someone else?
Nope.
Oh, sorry.
So I was checking.
Okay.
Nope.
So each year in October, we complete the data of all of our students who are in the school department. And a lot of the funding formula works off averages, okay? So the first thing that we look at is that we send in our attending counts. And in the top right-hand corner, you'll see that our attending pupil two-year average count, and again, looking at pre-K through 8, we have 1,902 students. The second box, okay, on this is our student-to-staff ratios. When EPS was developed, EPS stands for Essential Programs and Services. They're kind of setting the floor, okay, saying that the minimum a district should have is what they recommend for a ratio in the form, the minimum. We know the minimum isn't exactly what we're always looking for, and that our students need more. And this is the box that figures in exactly how many teachers, how many ed techs, how many other support staff, principals, administration, et cetera, should be in that. Now, some of you may have been looking and watching the news around LD 2226, which is a change in the funding formula based off the strong belief that students in poverty need more additional funding behind them than some of our more affluent communities in the area. Examples being, there are some affluent communities that have like 8% free and reduced lunch, and they're receiving more state funding than some communities that have 50 and 60% of their students free and reduced lunch. So we've been working really, really hard to move this bill past the legislature, and for Saco, who's kind of in a more neutral spot, this would have about an $80,000 to $90,000 subsidy gain coming our way. Certain communities are much more, and there are a few that are a little bit less. But as a whole, making sure that kids who are in poverty have some extra funding behind them. At the same time, you'll see that many of our affluent communities, if you looked in the top line where it's a 0.81, okay, or our ratio for student staff is 0.81, there are many communities that are 0.71, 0.74, and they have different economic standing within their community. And so the ability to pay and to fund more staff, I really have a strong belief needs to be a little bit more equalized around the state. In the third box down, that is your regional adjustment. And if the LD 2226 goes through, that regional adjustment will change from 1.09 to 1.15 for Saco. And what that's recognizing is that there are certain parts of the state it is more expensive to live. Saco being one of those. What also happens in the law is that places who were deemed by this regional adjustment to be cheaper to live right now get a negative factor, and everyone's going to have a baseline of 1.0. This indirectly matches and goes towards the teacher salary matrix, because obviously there is a push for teachers throughout the state to have a $50,000 minimum. That shouldn't be a challenge for Saco. What our bigger challenge is the $50,000 minimum for a starting teacher with a rent, a car payment, and a student loan payment, finding a reasonable place to live. And so that's something that we've got to work real hard on. The fourth box that's highlighted on this page is your per pupil rates. So all of the funding and all of the math on the first page you're building a per pupil rate. And as a superintendent or someone sitting here, the higher that per pupil rate, the better things are going to be when you start applying different formulas on page 2 of this document. On page 2 of this document, again, now the first box is talking about subsidizable students, the number of students in your district that can actually count for subsidy, which is over a 2-year average, which helps us a little bit on the drop-off because it's averaged over 2 years. The challenge is the additional weights don't take a 2-year average into place. So when we look at our system as a pre-K-12 system, we are looking at funding for 2,796 students. As you move through the page, there are numbers from page 1, your per pupil rates, set up and kind of multiplied by the number of students in each category. Take pre-K, for example. That's 100 students times 897, that gives you $897,000. And you move down through the page. In the red box to the left, that's our disadvantage rate, an increase of 2%. That's multiplied by a factor of 0.15. In the green box, that is your EL counts. And those number of students times a half a weight brings you additional subsidy on the side. That was a decrease of about 42 students in that scenario, and which impacts you by about $200,000 in less subsidy than you would have received. When you get to at the bottom of page 2, you're looking at your operating allocation totals, which is about $29 million. All of those numbers adding up to that. On page 3, now you're looking at expenditure-driven models. Models that say you spent this much money, and there's an amount that you get back for that. From gifted and talented, to special education, to transportation allocation, to your leased bus approvals, which is buses that have been approved for replacement with state subsidy. Additionally, as you go down the page, you'll see in the first one that's a 0 in green. We were able for the last 5 years to lease space for pre-K, and that has a 5-year kind of limit on it, and we knew that was running out, and we had gotten $101,000 a year, and now our time's out on that one, and we can't renew that. We have insured value factor, which is a number that we pay to Thornton Academy towards maintenance-y type items that the state pays back at 6%. All of those combined equal $41 million. So you're taking page 2, taking page 3, adding them together. On page 4, this is where your property valuation comes into play. You're taking your operating allocation, which is $41 million, and then they say as a community, your property is worth about $3.6 billion. You're multiplying that by the mill expectation, which is 5,645, which is set by the state. And they're saying, in order to get what we say will be the difference between operating allocation and your local required contribution, which calculates at $20,583,000, if you raise that amount, you will get $21.2 million in subsidy for your schools. And that number is about 80,000 more than the year before. Not a lot. That's what kind of sets the tone for us on this one. 10% valuation and a loss of students. and a loss of those weights on other page, that's where your math comes in. On page 3, you get $131,000 in additional subsidy for being part of an educational service center, for a total state share of 50.74%. So the state is funding education here at about the 50% level. This would be another good place for me to stop and answer any questions.
Any questions from counselors?
Okay. So, what drives the cost in this budget? And it's really a very, very simple formula that for most of it fits on about 10 slides, 10 lines on a spreadsheet. Tuition. So this is our students that attend Thornton Academy. That tuition increase is $1,175,000. Salaries for all of our staff pre-K through 8, $1.269 million. Health insurance benefits and other benefits, $752,000. Now, we have 10% in there, so hopefully we'll get good news, not bad news, and our rates won't go that high, but we won't know that until about the first week of April. And so that's why this is a fluid budget. We have a new van in for the transportation department, $72,000. Technology, AV at SMS, we're really trying to go through and replace the classroom audio-visual display mechanisms. One of the reasons that we're doing that now is we're trying to wrap up that project in that school, knowing that there's going to be a big focus from our technology department on transitioning to 2 new schools. And so we're trying to handle that all in 1 year in preparation for that. $132,000 is the 0.5% for Paid Family Medical Leave Act law that comes into play. We are $372,000 down on capital improvements. That is because last year we had a couple of bigger projects. We still have $500,000 in the budget for capital improvements. We have an interest payment is down, and the reason the interest placement, that's our state share of the bond, and just because last year it's not that it's really down, it's just we anticipated that payment being a little bit higher based on the bond schedule, and then things got delayed a little bit, and so the real payment this year is just less than what we anticipated last year. We have some contracted services decrease, some ESL purchase services and software, less students, less translation services, and some software. We have some expiring bus debt. So when you look at that line, you're at about $2.6 million, and the budget increase is about $2.7 million. When you look at where our community compares to other costs per student in southern Maine, put together this chart that we show every year. This is without debt service and vocational education. And so this is provided by the Department of Education, and you can see that the state average of spending per child is $18,472, so $18,472, and the Saco School Department per child, based off the 25 data, because you're running a couple of years behind, is $17,871. So currently we are spending under the state average per student. When you come to the last page of this presentation, this is kind of the overall of everything. This is where all of your numbers come together. And the budget increase this year in spending is 2.7 million, or up 4.74%. Now, when you really think about expenditure budget up 4.74%, and we still have to kind of hope that health insurance goes down, you sit to yourself saying, you know, that's a pretty good situation. Doing okay. Last year when we came out and we had a fairly strong subsidy picture last year, that first budget that we came out on the expenditure side last year, which there was a huge $1 million addition for the school project that was state funded, but it was an expense, we were at like 8%. But the tax impact was way less than that. We are in the exact opposite situation this year because we didn't pick up really any more additional state aid because of valuation and student loss. And student loss in a district our size, it's not like it just happens in one place. It happens evenly across, and so you don't have a lot of economy of scales that happen. In this situation, the impact on taxpayers is about $3.2 million, which means to taxpayers, that's about a 9.94%, even though your expenditure increase is half of that. So now we're at the point where you can really ask questions, because that's the end of our presentation. But a point where now I suspect there's a few more questions.
Councilor Hewitt, go ahead.
Quick question. Given all the immediate attention on providers outside of the school systems, we are auditing and checking all of our providers that we use in Saco, correct?
Yep.
Thank you.
And we don't have that many providers in the grand scheme of things. When you look at, and I'm assuming that you're talking like student service providers. Yeah, we have, you know, basically you'll have a few speech therapists, or you might have a psychological evaluator that you would bring in. Those are really what you have for providers.
Anyone else? Yeah. Councilor Edwards?
Thank you, Mayor. So the fact that we're under state average, is that us being just dealing with the numbers that we have, or are we being really thrifty? Like, would there be a noticeable benefit if we were operating at state average?
Yes, there would be. And that's kind of part of the work that we're doing with LD 2226, is that when you look at the position of spending in a school department, minus capital improvements, spending is staff related. And so one of the things I did in, we put out a kind of a written report around what we would determine, you know, a zip code crisis. I represent 3 very different districts where just across the river from here, the economic status situation that we're dealing with in that community, 65% of our students are disadvantaged. That's 30% different just here. And when you look at some of the very affluent communities in the state, and you can see it here on the list, some of those students are spending $27,000 per student. That's $10,000 more per kiddo than us. That can be programming. That can be instructional staff. Some of that will impact buildings and some of those pieces. You're sharing services from a central office point of view, so your efficiency factor is about as high as it can get. Now, we could say that we wanted to spend above state average and add a bunch of instructional staff, and for some of our schools, I'd say, well, where would you put them? Because there's not any room. So sometimes districts right-size in that way. We've made some great steps on this side in the last couple of years for looking at our support staff and an increase in their wages, and I'm sure there's more that we can do as a community. Bus drivers are always very difficult, ed techs. We're in teacher negotiations now, but in the grand scheme of things, if you look at an area average, we're right in the mix. But yeah, there are some things that happen in other places that, well, I'm not in those situations, so I don't want to, speculate. But as you can see, we spend less. And yes, there is also some advantages to, like, you have efficiencies. An extra 100 students probably, as you can see, wouldn't really necessarily change things expenditure-wise. 400 or 500 students would. And so, yeah, I mean, I think there are some places that we could do more, but I think that citizens, when you look at that in general, you're getting an extremely good value for your dollar because our kids perform well. They do well. I've had 2 kids in the Saco system and pretty happy with what I see. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that was going to be my follow-up. But based on outcomes, are there any different between us and Yarmouth, for example?
100%.
Yeah.
And again, we can go through, and we did part of this in our study of putting it out, that educational achievement follows spending. Now, also, there are many less challenges. There's very much a difference between here and in Falmouth, where 80% of your kids are impoverished. That classroom setup looks so much different. I think what concerns me the most is that as a school department, when you are looking through this lens, as a school department, are we doing everything that we can to make sure that students aren't coming to school and there are financial barriers put in their way? Meaning that we've worked really, really hard here to make sure that field trips don't cost a ton of money. Because no kid should have to think about, well, I'm just going to stay home because mom and dad can't bring the $20 to go here. Working at our middle school to make sure that traditionally ski club in Saco has been something that's been valued over time, where they go to Pleasant Mountain on Wednesday nights, making sure that's the absolute bottom rate that we can. I think one of the best decisions the state ever made was providing free and reduced lunch to all students, so that nobody walks through that door being thought of any differently, or kids not returning forms and thus not eating because they are embarrassed. So we've worked really hard to make sure that doesn't happen, and I think there's still continued growth. Because sometimes we forget how easy it can be for some families to pull a $20 bill out of their wallet, and how that can be an hour's worth of pay for somebody else. And so I think that we have to recognize the importance of that, continue to fund those pieces. The amount of work that we do on a given Friday afternoon in the wintertime to make sure that families who are homeless are in a hotel, the money we get from city council, donations from churches, from other places, to make sure that kiddos have backpacks. When we had the federal shutdown earlier this year and SNAP benefits, I mean, that was really, really a kind of, I just want to say crazy time of making sure that families had enough. When some of our community members were scared to leave their home.
Yep.
And we were making sure, and our staff was 100% making sure that families had food. That is more prevalent than we know and understand. And the number shows you in Saco that that is creeping up year after year. And that's why we have to keep fighting to making sure that our kids have equitable access to all of those programs. And I think not only is it in school, but the thing that can be almost as more challenging for our students is this the opportunity gap that some families have versus others.
Right.
And what are those opportunities where some families have this to do on the weekend when others are just making sure they have heat? Those are the things that I feel that strongly we have to continue to advocate and fight for.
Just one more question. I don't know if it's reflected in these numbers. I'm just wondering the impact of lack of housing for staff. Is that if we see it, is it in the salary or?
So it's, when you think about the numbers and lack of housing, where it comes in is that people wind up driving further. We ran some numbers the other day, and I can't remember them off the top, exactly the percentage. I think there's like 74 of our teaching staff still lives in town, but that's been slowly dropping over time. Our biggest concerns, and I think probably number one kind of project that could really come together as a city and school department is thinking about what kind of jumpstart program can we implement that would allow some of our beginning staff members to have some real affordable housing that was in partnership with the school department. And there's some models out there and some things we've thought about how we could make that happen. It's just finding those right properties or places where you could connect on that, because that becomes our challenge, is that we will have students, and I would say probably go back about 17, 18 years ago when I was a principal in Westbrook, and I had applications for, say, a fifth grade teacher. There'd be like 200. And we would look, because everyone was trying to get to Southern Maine, higher salaries. And if I saw someone like Mr. Pelletier, who was from the county, and they had on a resume that they had raked blueberries or dug potatoes, I was like, that person knows how to work. They're going to be great. And that piece was coming down. Now when we talk to college grads, when we go to a college fair, they ask some questions back of us. They're like, okay, so you're right around the $50,000 range. They'll look at us and say, so explain this to us. We can go to Southern Maine, have 3 roommates, just like we had in college, that we just got this degree and we're hoping, or we can take a job in mid-Maine or eastern Maine for not that much difference in pay and actually maybe buy a house still. That's kind of where we're at, and that one is a tough place that we're working against that.
Thank you.
Councilor Gale.
It's just a couple of questions and following up on Councilor Edwards. In terms of you'd mentioned this is basically like a status quo budget. Yep. Of kind of like what does that buy? What does the $17,000 per student mean in achievement? And is it possible, or I guess as we move along, it'd be interesting to see, like, testing wise where we've been at. What is what are the results that are coming out of this from a more of a quantitative look at what the numbers say? And then just also looking at the state average there, even though if you look at the first two columns, the regular instruction and the special education instruction, we're well above the state average, right? So it looks like it's the operation and maintenance that is the driver of why we're not meeting that. Is that?
So one of the things I would tell you is that because of the fact that we tuition students, those special education and that regular instruction number is like it's a real expenditure, but it's definitely in the wrong line. Meaning that when you put that $17,000 behind an elementary student, it kind of plays out into all of these categories, but in a tuition situation, when you're paying the bill, that is a bill that's required for us to code under regular instruction. So it gets plucked in that category, even though it might not. If you look at Dayton, it's the same way, comparative to some of the others. So that's not necessarily the best indicator to go through, only because you're shipping, $15 million off in that one category that isn't done that way in other districts.
Gotcha. And then in terms of the slide with the demographics over time, so we're basically, it looks like, maybe I'm interpreting this wrong, so we're having essentially the same budget, but it looks like our economic status, ELL students, special education counts are all putting a lot more strain on the budget in terms of the number of those students. Is there concern over the next couple of years of this trend increasing and our ability to meet the needs of the students?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that as the economy is impacted and inflation goes in, I think that we definitely have a concern that more of our families are going to fall into this category. I mean, what's scary to me is that the federal poverty number for like a family of four is like $40,000. That doesn't even make sense. We know that the data in southern Maine and our region, that the just making it level for a family of four is over $100,000. And so as these numbers creep up, I think that's a concern in what we can offer our students. I do think that like our EL student that number is probably not going to get back to what it was.
Sure.
And I think that locally, we kind of feel like we've probably reached a lot of the tipping point, because even some of the housing that is being added is either really, really expensive or really too small for a lot of children. And so I don't know that we're going to see large school growth happening anytime soon. But I think that we just have to look at where our families are and how they're operating. And, the other day when I filled up my vehicle, the pump stopped before it was filled because you'd reached the $100 part. And so that's my concern for families, is that, costs a lot just to raise kids and have kids, and we're not even talking about the essentials that you think of outside, whether it's your kids being involved in athletics and what that bill is, or your kids don't want to go fishing or whatever. There's a cost to all of it. And I think that should be scary for us.
And then just lastly, you had mentioned a couple times the LD 2226. Could you just give a quick update on where that's at in the legislative process and whether or not that's going to get signed or passed?
So 2226, I really feel has the momentum this time around. There are 165 communities throughout the state that share about 37 or $8 million in additional subsidy, with a majority of that going to your highest poverty areas, and to really the rural parts of the state. One of the things over the last couple of years I've really said is that some of our best partners here along the coast in southern Maine are also those same coastal communities in Mid-Coast and Washington County, because they're all in a different scale of things, land rich and income poor. And so we partner up really well with them. And so as the bill was crafted and looked at, you know, we're not going to be one of the major winners here, but I think our support of making sure that kids who are growing up in poverty are supported financially is what we can best advocate for. And so I feel like there's a really good shot to do that. What I don't suspect will be looked at this time is the special ed adjustment, because it's very complicated in the fact that the swings could be huge for some places. There are some places that are spending, and again, this is what's kind of messed up with the system, is that it's based off a reimbursement model. So what you spend, you get back. The more you spend, the more you get back. So you have some affluent communities spending $32,000, $33,000 a special education student, and you've got places like Machias, Maine that are spending $10,000. It doesn't make sense for us as a state, because they're all spending our tax dollars, and we really need to have a system that's a little bit more fair, where the have-nots have an opportunity to keep up.
Counselor Hewitt?
I have 3 questions.
Sure.
The first, when you're talking about student need, you guys have the foundation Ask.
Yep.
Assist Saco kids. Can you tell the other counselors, because budget time is coming, how valuable that is to you?
So Ask is probably one of the more valuable programs that we have out there from a standpoint of immediate relief for families. Shelley Kane kind of oversees Ask for us. It works in the office between both school departments, and conversely, we have the Biddeford Education Foundation. They have the same mission. They were thought about, you know, you start those with thinking about supporting kids, and then it turns into, well, there's nobody at 4 o'clock when the family is being evicted from an apartment, has no place to go, and GA is not open. We're open. And so Ask over the years has just been really the driving force for making sure that kids have food on the weekends. It's the funnel through when sometimes people have a bill they can't pay for housing. A lot of our grants get funneled into that to make sure that we can put that right back out. And it's the #1 driver for us, that when a family may be staying in a car that weekend, where we can get them a hotel.
Thank you. Okay, my next question. When you mentioned teacher salaries, are you having a hard time with retention? Are other towns swiping our teachers? Or are we able to maintain our staff?
No, not necessarily swiping our teachers. You'll have some. Some of that happens. And, you know, many times, if people are leaving here for another district, a lot of it has to be where they live. Mm-hmm. I actually, for the most part, when I look inland and call Superintendent Markey in 57 or Superintendent Gleason in MSAD 6, many of the times it's us calling them saying, we have someone who's applied for a position, we'd like to hire them, they live in Saco, and they don't want to drive a half hour each way. Our biggest piece, and again, it's always certain positions. Special education positions are so hard to fill. Specialty positions are fine, but as far as an overall piece, you know, you're going to have some yes and no that come and go from that, and a lot of it's based off where they live.
Okay, right. And the last one is kind of a statement. that I just want to make sure that all the information is out there. Since 1887, Thornton Academy has served as the high school for Saco residents. Today, it remains a cornerstone of our community with 800 to 900 Saco students walking the halls. This represents 25 to 30% of our city's total K-12 population. While we appreciate the diligence and dedication shown by the committee in examining the many complex aspects of this agreement, the timeline has become a point of significant concern. The original contract expiration was June 30th, 2024. The extension expires June 30th, 2026. We are now operating under borrowed time. In my discussion with community, none of my constituents have expressed a desire to continue without a formal contract. It is fundamentally unfair to our students, parents, academy staff, and faculty to expect them to move forward under a cloud of uncertainty. Our families deserve the stability of agreed-upon terms to ensure the continued quality of education for nearly a third of Saco's youth. The time for examination is past. The time for resolution is now. For the sake of our students and the future of Saco's education, let's work to reach an agreement. And speaking with both sides about when have they met, has there been forward progress, I kind of feel like it's like talking to two people who are waiting for somebody to ask them to prom. Both of you have a symbiotic relationship. You both have wonderful things to offer, and please get it done. Get this contract settled.
Kevin, you want me to respond?
Sure. I'll talk as, well, on school board, but also as part of the negotiating committee. We do want things resolved, but it does take, two parties to negotiate. And I haven't seen from my side and our committee a way to get to that resolution that we all want. That said, in the budget, Thornton Academy will be fully, I think, should be happy with this budget going into next year. But we will be presenting something soon to them. And things have been happening behind the scenes. But it does take two. And we have been very accommodating to make sure that Thornton Academy does not go backwards in funding, certainly, and have some sort of, plan to go forward. But there hasn't been one significant meet of the middle concession by Thornton Academy. Not one. So if you have constituents that are, I think we're all supportive of our academy, but if you have one constituent that says that we have somehow pulled back or somehow not supportive, I'd like to know about that. We have a couple of things we really want. We have the free lunch program. The academy is one of only 3 private academies in the whole state that does not offer that. Every public school, from Cape Elizabeth to York to Biddeford to Machias, every town has a free lunch for their high school kids, and we don't. So if Thornton Academy wants more outright money from us, that's something that we would want them to fund with that money. Is that a hard ask? I ask you guys, is that a hard ask? If Thornton Academy wants more money, why wouldn't the taxpayers of Saco want something in return? Are they providing a great education for us? Possibly. I think they're good. Maybe they're great. Are we getting that information? Are we getting the grade information? The grades? Are we getting something basic as attendance? Do we get their attendance figures? And I know they're watching right now. So this whole talk of pressure on us, that we're not coming to a negotiation, we've even offered a mediator. Guess who doesn't want to have a mediator? Us. So it's getting near the finish line. I'll give you that. But yes, we do want answers. I get along fine with my friends and administrators at Thornton Academy. I think all of us do get along. But bad guys, good guys don't work in this. They don't work, okay? We're partners, we're friends, and Thornton Academy and Saco will be here long after we're gone. But now's the time, in these next couple weeks, there'll be something presented, and I hope we come to a fair resolution. Otherwise, there's the budget. We can move on another year. That's not our motivation, but we'll see how it answers. It's out in the public. Let's see how they respond. Then when I say they, I don't want to say us versus them. I'm just saying it is two parties. And if we want a contract, that's how you get there. Two parties coming together. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, questions or comments? Any school board members wishing to ask council a question or comments? Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate you guys all coming out tonight and presenting this for us.
Thank you.
Okay, would like to officially call the City Council meeting to order at 7:33. Would like to make note of all members present this evening with the exception of Councilor Doyle, and we also have with us City Administrator Pelletier. Would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Great. Thank you very much, everyone. Moving on to item number 4, we did not have anything listed, but we did come across some sad news yesterday, and I would like to take a moment to recognize Bill Johnson. Bill Johnson was born on March 12, 1934, and during his lifetime has been greatly involved in community service. He graduated from the University of Maine in 1956, where he met his wife, Mary Atkinson, who was a Saco native, and her family owned the Atkinson Furniture Company with stores in Biddeford and Saco, and the store today still retains the Atkinson's name on Main Street in Saco. Bill and Mary settled in Saco in 1989, where they had renovated the old Atkinson homestead, which is now a historical part of the Saco community. Bill served for 3 terms, 6 years, as a Saco City Councilor, and 3 terms, 6 years, as the mayor of this wonderful community. He was also presented the title as the first honorary member of the Saco Fire Department. He served 24 years as an elected public service, and it bespeaks any other praises that might be afforded Bill Johnson. Upon leaving office in November of 2003, he was appointed as Mayor Emeritus by the Saco City Councilor, and there he continued to perform functions representing the present mayor and the city council, such as ribbons cuttings, ceremonies, and welcoming new businesses ventures to the city of Saco. He visited schools, he talked with the young people, he talked to them about government and government service, and he participated in holiday celebrations with the city. So in honor of Bill and his passing on March 15th, 2026, if you would please take a moment of silence to recognize. Thank you, and we wish the best and many memories to his family. He will be missed. Okay, moving on to item number 5, committee correspondence to council. Do we have any committee members wishing to speak? Councilor Gale, then Councilor Edwards.
So I've got a statement from the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. This was in regards to the Route 1 letter that the city received from Maine DOT. So the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee strongly urges the council and other decision makers to work with the Maine DOT to provide the requested information to support the road diet improvement on Route 1. Road diets have been shown to increase traffic flow in congested areas, enable safer turning by designating dedicated left turn lanes, provide dedicated space for protected bicycle lanes, and improve overall safety for all road users. While dangerous speeds are the norm, car crashes are on the rise, and a new school and an increase of residential housing in this area is on the horizon. It is no longer acceptable to maintain the status quo for this 2.4-mile stretch. A change needs to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Edwards?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to share that Saco Main Street is celebrating its 25th anniversary this year, marking a quarter century of work supporting our downtown businesses, events, and community vitality. To celebrate this milestone, they will be hosting a 25th anniversary gala on May 16th from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. at Riverwinds Farm. The evening will bring together community leaders, volunteers, past staff, business owners, and supporters to recognize the many people and partnerships that have helped shape our downtown over the past 25 years. The program will include a cocktail reception, silent auction, a DJ and dancing, and special recognitions for volunteers, partners, and leaders who have contributed to the organization's success over the years. Everyone is invited to attend. They are also extending an invitation to city council members and city staff to join us for the celebration. Anyone interested in attending can learn more and purchase tickets on the website sacomainstreet.org. This event is both a celebration of Saco Main Street's history as accredited Main Street through a Main Street America and an opportunity to recognize the strong collaboration between the organization, the city, and the many community members who contribute to support a vibrant downtown. I also have other news. This week, if you are hungry, it's already started. Maine Restaurant Week is back in downtown Biddeford and Saco from from Sunday to the end of the week. And it is the perfect excuse to get out and explore a local food scene. If you want to learn more about it, again, go to the same site, sacomainstreet.org. There's an opportunity. If you check into 3 places, you could win $100, but I don't know if that's gambling, so I don't want to talk any more about it. But go to sacomainstreet.org and learn more.
We'll call it fundraising. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, moving on to item number 6, that is public comment. If there are any members of the public wishing to speak, please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to address council.
Hello, Kevin Roach, 18 Vines Road. First off, this is the first I'm hearing that Bill Johnson passed away. I can't tell you enough how just him and Mary are such nice people, welcomed me when I got involved more in Saco government, transplant like me from out of state, just a dear, fantastic gentleman, and Saco was so much more for the better for him to graced our community and settled here. Now I forgot what I was going to say elsewhere. No. I'm here to talk about the dredge that just happened as president of SOS Saco Bay. Again, a big thank you to the city. The city should be very impressed with the results and the efficiency by our contracted company, Michaels. You know, it was almost another winter of not having that dredge. You could partly blame a former ex-FEMA director that likes to shoot dogs and young mothers. But we got through that, and I think this country's gotten through that too, to basically work on things that need to be done or well past done. This isn't just a fluff project here. This is to protect our environment, protect our shoreline, protect our property values. It's a good small trial run. Even if that sand got blown away next week by a storm, that meant that we would have had more damage to the roads, at least at 100K, 200K to happen. So, but now the big stuff happens this summer, and I think we're much more ready for it. And the more we can, spread the word of a successful dredge program, can get our neighboring communities, our fellow Southern Maine communities together to have a repeat program, repeat dredging, repeat shoreline protection. We have the resources here now, and I look forward to an attentive and active Maine community for their shorelines. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Okay, not seeing anyone seeking recognition. Moving on to item number 7, that is the approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of March 9th, 2026?
So moved.
Motion made by Counselor Edwards. Is there a second? Second by Counselor Hewitt. Any discussion or comments on the minutes? Okay, roll call vote. Counselor Edwards?
Yes.
Counselor Parks?
Yes.
Counselor Onen?
Yes.
Counselor Gale?
Yes.
Counselor Hewitt?
Yes.
Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Moving on to item number 8, that is consent items, and we do have 2 this evening. Item A is an application for a solid waste permit with Casella Waste Systems, DBA Pine Tree Waste Incorporated. And item B is the application for a solid waste permit for Waste Management of Maine. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Counselor Johnston. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Counselor Edwards. Any item wishing to be moved? Okay, roll call vote. Counselor Edwards?
Yes.
Counselor Parks?
Yes.
Counselor Onen?
Yes.
Counselor Gale?
Yes.
Counselor Hewitt?
Yes.
Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion to approve passes 6-0. Okay, moving on to item number 9, action items this evening. We do have one item, and that is a presentation of the fiscal year 26 quarter 2 financial summary report. And with us tonight, we have Director Belanger.
Hey. Good evening, Mayor
Good evening.
and members of the City Council. Before we start right into the quarter 2 financial report, I just want to introduce Samantha Bryant, who is here with us tonight. She is the Deputy Finance Director and started with the city in January of this year. We're extremely happy to have her join us. She brings to us 13 years of extensive governmental accounting work and her experience in local government. So she jumped right in, and she's already made some great input and value to the team and to the city of Saco. So we're very happy to have her aboard, and we look forward to working with her long term.
Thank you and welcome, Samantha.
So before you tonight, you have the second quarter of the fiscal year 26 report. This report is from July of 25 to December of 25, or 50% through the fiscal year. I would like to note that a quarterly report is to provide a general overview of where we stand with revenues and expenditures as a percentage of the fiscal year, and this is for the general fund. It is also important to note that as a governmental entity, any time after the submission of this report, that the Finance Department may need to make necessary adjustments to this period to either corrections or invoices or expenditures that come in that need to be posted to this period. Also important to keep in mind that both revenue collections and expenditures may occur once a year, they may occur quarterly, they may come in monthly, or even seasonally. And one example of this is if you look at the Recreation Department revenue, we're 50% away through the fiscal year. It's only showing 35% of revenues collected. But again, with the Rec Department, you know, their heavy season is approaching, and probably in the midst of this. So we're going to see a lot of activity in that revenue coming up before the end of the fiscal year. There's one other area that I wanted to address, and that is the welfare reimbursement. That has been a topic in the past. It is coming in at 133%. We are going to see more revenue coming in fiscal year 26. And what happened here is that the state of Maine does reimburse the city 70% of any of the expenditures that we have to provide folks with general assistance. And past practice was that revenues were recorded from the state when they were received instead of really posting to the proper fiscal year. So that had caused some discrepancies within each fiscal year, and it also caused some discrepancies between what we were actually paying out and the amount of money that we were coming in. So this process has been modified, and we now record the revenue as the reimbursement is requested. So it stays in line with the activity that's happening throughout the fiscal year. So this is a catch-up year, so in fiscal year 26, because we only estimated 88,000, which was kind of historical information, we're going to see a fairly large surplus in this area before the end of the fiscal year. I am happy to note that everything else seems to be tracking as we expect, and I do not anticipate any concerns at this time. I am happy to try to answer any questions. If I can't answer them tonight, I'm happy to report back of any specific questions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Councilor Gale?
I had a couple of questions, and thank you for sending me the answers to that. Thank you to the administrator and yourself. But I thought for the public and the folks watching, I thought I'd just raise these questions.
Mm-hmm.
On the revenue side, there's the cable television franchise fee. Could you explain a little more about what the source of this revenue is? And,
Sure.
And do we anticipate it coming up in the second half of the year?
Yes, sure. So a cable franchise fee is when a municipality enters into an agreement with the cable company in the local area in exchange for using their public right-of-way. So the Saco does have a franchise agreement with Spectrum, your cable company, and part of that agreement is that we receive 5% of their gross revenues, and 5% is the highest allowable amount that we can charge the cable company within these agreements. So the cable company also passes this fee on to your customer. So if you receive a cable bill, you're going to see that little franchise fee that is passed down to you as a customer. That fee is then calculated and provided and passed on to the city on a quarterly basis. So with Saco, we do kind of like to note that we, even though the state says you can use these revenues in any way you want, we do make it a point to kind of note as a point of reference that the cable franchise fee is used to offset our operations for the government access channel and operations of the communications department. So they pay this fee quarterly. At the time that this report was published, there was only one payment. The second payment for their second quarter has come in, and that was another $48,000. And so now we're at a total of 101. So we have 2 more payments to come in. Just a point of what we're seeing with people opting out of cable, that we have been seeing a gradual decline in this revenue across the board. So we're watching this carefully. Andrew Dickinson, the Director of Communications, is in communication with and participates in this agreement with the cable company.
Great, and then just two other questions here. On the community policing revenue line item, what's the source of that revenue? And similarly, do we anticipate it to increase in the second part of the year?
Yes, so there are two revenue line items that are very similar. One is the community policing, and the other one is just 2 lines down from that, if you're looking at the report, called school resource officer. So the community policing line item is the monies that we receive from Thornton Academy for the school resource officer. And the other school resource officer line item is from just the Saco school system. So we currently have 2 school resource officers, and I spoke with Chief Clements today, and we bill them at the end of the school year. So the payment really comes in once a year.
Gotcha.
So we do anticipate receiving revenues. We bill about 70% of the cost of those school resource officers.
And then last one on the revenue side, and then just one on the expenditure. So on the intergovernmental state aid, just as a whole, several of the line items are over the 100% at the midway point. Does that indicate that we will owe the state a reimbursement if these trends continue?
So there are several state aid revenues that we receive, and at the time of preparing your annual budget, some of them we know we may get indication from the state, like the state sharing, revenue sharing, and let's see, there's like the road assistance and so forth. So we might have a better indication of what we're going to budget. So these estimates are basically estimates. So if after the state does their final calculation and provides their distribution to their communities, we may receive more than we anticipated. So, or we may receive less. We don't like that to happen, but we do like to receive a little bit more than we anticipate. And so in that case, we do not owe the state back any money. That's just a surplus that will be returned to fund balance.
Great. And then last question on the expenditure side, on the public works line item, on the operating piece of it, looks like it's about 12% under at the midpoint as we're transitioning into away from winter. Do we anticipate that trend to continue in terms of operating being under budget?
Yes, so those expenditures in the Public Works Department are going to increase. Weather is a big factor and an impact to any municipal budget. And this winter has been pretty rough. And with the expense of sand and salt and overtime to clear the roads and treat the roads. So we are anticipating that we are going to have a higher expenditure, but Travis Moore, your Director of Public Works, has been watching this snow budget very carefully.
Great. Thank you so much for answering those.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, looks like everyone is set. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 10 this evening, that is the administrator's report. Administrator Pelletier.
Thank you, Mayor. Sticking with the Public Works theme, the RFP for the 2026 hot mix asphalt is posted. We're soliciting bids for the period April 1st of 2026 to April 1st, 2027. Bids will be accepted until 1 p.m. on Wednesday, March 25th. You can find more information under the bids and RFPs on the city's website. The 7th annual Earth Day celebration is just around the corner. Saco Parks and Recs invites you to help care for our natural environment through the 7th annual Earth Day celebration. Volunteers will meet at the Saco Community Center to enjoy some breakfast, take a group photo, and then dispatch to various cleanup locations. Tasks include trash collection, weeding, mulching, raking, and other spring cleanup tasks. This will take place on Friday, April 24th from 9 to 1 p.m. Volunteers under the age of 14 must be accompanied by an adult. You can learn more at sacorec.com. Another friendly reminder that the homestead exemption application is due April 1st. This program provides eligible homeowners a $25,000 reduction in your assessed value. To qualify, your home must be declared as your permanent residence. You must have owned a homestead in Maine for at least 12 months. If you've owned a homestead elsewhere in Maine before moving to Saco, the 12-month ownership rule may be waived. Submit your application by April 1st to see the exemption applied to the next year, which will be reflected on your fall 2026 tax bill. It's important to note that if you've already been approved for your current property, you do not need to reapply. You can find additional exemptions and application forms on the Saco Assessor's webpage, sacomaine.org/assessor. And our upcoming council meetings are March 30th and April 6th. That concludes the report.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for the administrator? Okay, not seeing anyone. Moving on to item 11, that is council discussion and comment. Any councilors wishing to share? Councilor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry, I'm a chatty Kathy tonight. And that's no slam against Kathy's. So I do have a constituent in my ward who I will basically just summarize. He's noticed a lot of the cameras on the lights, and he's not really concerned about whether they're reading plates. And we know from previous discussions that that's illegal in the state of Maine. But he's just wondering who the company is. Is that Flock, the company that currently, it's an AI company, Flock? Are the cameras from Flock? And if we don't know, if you can get me the answer, I can get back to my constituent.
Yeah, we'll get you the answer tomorrow. Could you remind me again where you said the location is?
Let's see, I randomly started to notice a staggering number of cameras at intersections around Saco. So I don't think he didn't give me an exact location. He just said a
We
staggering
have multiple
number.
that the police department, yeah, off the top of my head, I cannot remember the name of the company, but we can.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I would like to just remind councilors, Councilor Parks? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to take this opportunity to thank yourself and my council colleagues on the very kind words upon the birth of my daughter. It really put a shine on our day when we came home from the hospital and we had a card from the city. It brought my wife to tears, so thank you a lot.
Very welcome, and we're glad that you brought home a happy, healthy girl. I would like to just throw out a reminder to councilors, and if you have any questions, please let either myself, Administrator Pelletier, and Deputy Prescott. You received an email with the supported entities. We did ask to try to get comments in by today, but if you need another day or two, this is the first year of our new process. So just as a reminder, it will be coming to you as a zero-based budget, so none of those entities are in the budget when it will be presented on the 30th. They will all be open for discussion and changes. So if there are any changes, ones you definitely don't, please email the administrator and deputy as well. Budget is going to be presented on the 30th. We will be having that presented. So again, any questions, reach out to any three of us regarding those entities, and let's get those comments in as soon as we can. Okay, not seeing anything from anyone else. Moving on to item 12, that is adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion made by Councilor Johnston. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Edwards. Roll call vote. Councilor Edwards?
Yes.
Councilor Parks?
Yes.
Councilor Onen?
Yes.
Councilor Gale?
Yes.
Councilor Hewitt?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion to adjourn passes 6-0 at 8 o'clock exactly. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a great evening.